Hi there, welcome back to the channel, and welcome to the third video and final video in the restoration of this Selena B-217. This really worked out a lot better than I expected. I'm not going to go into too much detail. For that, you'll have to watch the video and listen to me yak for a while. But as I said, it's the last video. This thing's completed. I give you a demo at the end on how the reception is. It's surprisingly good, so enjoy the video. Okay, so we got to the stage where I want to do the FM alignment, the IF alignment, because the entire FM chain was messed up with those capacitors. Now, as usual, setting this up is a lot more complex than doing it, but I've got to sort of follow the instructions a little bit more than usual. If we look at the service manual, what it tells us to do is 10.7 megahertz, which is the IF frequency. The pointer you can put anywhere. You have to adjust L13 and L15. We'll see what those are in a minute. Well, actually, I'll show you now. 13 and 15 are these two. We've got to sort of work backwards. I know that this end here is the end where that transistor, where that trimmer pot is. And so we go from the end, we've got 14 and then 13 and 15. If we look at the radio, we've got the trimmer over here. And we go there, that's the, what is that one, 14? And that is 13 and 15. So it's these two over here. What they tell us to do is to inject a signal with the tone modulating the FM carrier of 10.7, deviation of plus minus 75 kilohertz, and to the base of transistor 15. They also tell us that the signal should be, now for the Selena 217, it's this one over here, I believe. So it should be between 4,000 and 6,000 microvolts, so 4 and 6 millivolts. That's pretty high. And you measure the output. Now, okay, what have I got to do here? The base of 15, if we go back to this situation here, there's the transistor 15. The base is the middle one over there. And although it's a little difficult to see, I've used a very small clip on here. It's the middle pin of that transistor over here. Okay. And I've got to adjust this one and this one. And I've got the output to the speaker. I've connected my external speaker, this one over here, because it allows me to either put speaker or dummy load. I've got to put it on speaker for now. We are interested in this section over here. There's transistor 15 over here. And we are injecting the signal to the base here. Goes through there, goes through, there's 13, 15, 13, 14. 14 is for the AM, so we won't worry about that. So it's these two that we have to play with. And we are reading at the output, at the speaker output, so we don't worry about measuring voltages across this capacitor or anything like that. So let me set things up and see if we get a tone on there. Okay, step one, signal generator is sending 10.7 megahertz. The amplitude is set between 4 and 6. I'm going to give it 5. The modulation is type FM and deviation of 75 kilohertz. The tone will be 1 kilohertz. And I think that's all we need to do there. It then comes out of here. And I'm passing it through the step attenuator and dummy antenna, not to use attenuation or the antenna, but because this thing's got a capacitor inside, so this allows me to avoid having to use that 10 nanofarad capacitor. So the signal coming out here is going to the base of the transistor 15 as required, and it's already coupled through a capacitor. And there it is going to the base of that transistor 15. Now, behind this mess, what I've actually done is I've desoldered the audio coming to that jack, which then goes to the speaker because I don't want to hear the noise. So I've connected that to my test speaker over there. So I can now select speaker or dummy. With the scope, I'm monitoring that to see the signal on the scope. And I'm actually measuring the AC voltage at the speaker with my Simpson. So I think I've got everything ready. And all I need to do now is switch it on. So powered the radio. And I think we're going to hear, I'm going to put the volume a little lower. They tell us to put it on max, but I think we're going to hear a very loud noise. Yes, we do. That's full volume. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on dummy, and we can still see it on the scope. And now I can put the volume up full as they require. And that's what I get on the scope. So it's coming through, and as you can see, just hit it. If I lower or increase the volume, that's what I get. Now, let me go to the amplitude over here and give it 6 millivolts. See, that starts clipping. So I'm actually going to leave it at 4 millivolts. That should do, okay? Volume's on max. I don't see anything amiss. I think it's all ready. So let's try the adjustments. So they tell us to adjust this guy for max. And it really doesn't do much. It's just a little peak over there. Let me show you the meter. As you can see, it doesn't do much. There's a little peak there, and it starts coming down. So that would be the peak. Okay. Now what they tell us to do with this next one is, see what I've done here. This thing is actually sounding, whoa, it's loud. Okay. What they tell us to do now with this one is to change the modulation. Change the modulation here to AM, type AM, and they say depth of 30%. I'll leave the 1 kilohertz signal. Now I'm going to put on the speaker, and we can still see the scope, but you're supposed to hear the AM modulation coming through, and I don't. So I'm going to increase the amplitude, and now I can hear it. Can you hear it? We can't really see it. But what you need to do is adjust this one to get the maximum rejection, so the lowest amplitude. That's going up. There's 0. And it goes up again. That there seems to be the lowest modulation, okay? Now I'm going to put this back to, say, 5. Put that on dummy. Put the modulation type to FM again. Okay, and we should have our peak here as well. That's changed a bit. I should put this volume up. This is on max. Yeah, okay. So I think I've done that. I've done those two. Maximum AM rejection, maximum amplitude, injecting at that correct point. So I think that stage is done. And I'm not overdriving it, because if I did overdrive it, if I go to the source and I increase the amplitude, it's going to clip, because the speaker volume will be too high, but I can drop that. It's clipping at the output. So if I make this, say, 9 millivolts, it gets better, but then of course when you increase the volume, it clips. So I'll leave it at the 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever they suggest, and I think we've got as good as we can get. Those two are done. Right, go on to the next one. Now the next thing they tell us to do is to play with 2 trim pots. Here we go, 49 and 50. And this is for the AFC. There's 0 adjustment of the AFC. Now the AFC is working pretty well as it is, so I'm not going to mess with it. Next, we go to test the 3rd IF amp, the 2nd IF amp, and so on. And basically this is the same as the usual situation. You just keep putting it in one step before the respective IF transformer. So what do they tell us to do? Supply the generator with plus minus 15. I think here they mean 22 kilohertz. So I'll change that via capacitor to the base of transistor 10. Here's the layout. We did that one. Now we've got to go back. Where's transistor 10? There's transistor 10 over there. And can I see it? Or is it one of those little, it's those color, oh no, I can see it. I can see it. Okay. So base of transistor 10, which is the middle pin, and the amplitude 600 to 900 microvolts. So we're going to use the stepped attenuator a little bit now. And we adjust 5 and 7. So there's transistor 10, and so now it starts getting confusing because 5 and 7 is actually in the wrong place. If you, where are we? Same base of transistor 7. So they're sort of going back. Transistor 10 and then transistor 7. Transistor 10 is over here. I don't see how you can adjust. You can't adjust that one by feeding into the base of that one. That doesn't make sense. So if you feed to the base of that one there, transistor 7, then you can adjust 5, 7, 9, and 12. Now that makes sense to me, which is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to set the signal into the base of transistor 7, and I'm going to do 5, 7, 9, and 12. Okay, so where's transistor 7? Transistor 7, 6, 9, 6. That must be 7 over here because that's 6, that's 9, that's 8. So that'll be 7 over here. So it'll be right next to these two cores over here, 3 and 2. So it's that guy over there, and it'll be the middle pin as well. 5, 7, 9, and 12. So 5 is that one, 7, 9, 12. So it's these 4 at the bottom. So it is, if we go back to here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Injecting it into there. So let's set that up. I've got that all set up. I've got the signal on the scope, as you can see there. And for this one, I'm just going to focus on the meter and on the adjustments. I'm just going to go for a peak. I'll be keeping an eye on the scope anyway, but we shouldn't have too much issues over there. That's peaked. Oh, nice. It's always nice when you get a nice big change like that. And it's surprising when you don't, because these capacitors were completely out. I don't understand why we don't get more. Look at that. I do not understand it. I've changed capacitors here that were sometimes more than double the value, and this thing is still basically tuned. I really do not get it. I do not get it. But anyway, I'm not going to complain. That seems to have done the alignment. I think that's it. I think IF alignment is done. Oh, there's one more. There is one more. L3. They do tell us, I was just looking at the schematic, they do tell us to connect it to the base of VT6. Now VT6 is down here, and they tell us to adjust L3, which is that one there. Is that right? VT6. Yeah, V6, I can see that there. So to the base of that one, which is again is the middle one, yes. And we adjust, it's this one here. Yeah, this is L3, that's V6. Let me set that up. Okay, I've done that. I had to attenuate a hell of a lot more, as is obvious. And let's see what this thing does. Again, not much. It seems that we've aligned the FMIF. A little bit surprising, but nevertheless, seems to be done. Okay, for the final step, you're supposed to adjust the internal IF transformer, which is not that difficult to find. They're pretty well labeled here, but the problem is, where do you inject it? They tell you to inject it to the base of L3, or V3, sorry, and I don't want to remove this. I don't want to go that far. I could just unscrew that and try and find the base. I think this thing is going to do very, very well. I'm going to test it. I don't want to mess around in this. I will have to probably adjust for the RF alignment, but I'm not going to mess with the IF inside here. This thing is pretty good. And let me show you what happens if you switch this on and you just come anywhere near here. It comes through because this thing is radiating and it's coming through to those lead-offs to the IF strip. So I think this is pretty good. I'm going to try reception, see if it's improved. So let's give this guy a try. I've just got the internal antenna, the whip.
Pois é, se calhar o mesmo vai. Nas sensações extreme, boa tarde. O primeiro compositor judeu conhecido fora das comunidades judaicas foi Salomone Rossi, 1570-1630.
This is one of the ones I received very, very well over here. So is this one.
Ribeira Brava, 105.6.
And I'm getting some that I wasn't getting before. Now this is pretty far away, but I'm still getting it, which I wasn't doing before. So I think the IF alignment for the FM is perfectly fine. The RF may require a bit of tweaking, but I'm not even sure that I'm going to do that. You see, I've got this thing is so vague. This one's on 99, there's 96, there's 108. It's very difficult to determine where you are, really. This is at 101.6, 101.3, 101.6. And down here you got, this is 89.3. There's 88. This one is a bit off. So it's a bit off at the end, but otherwise you can't really tell where it is, can you? So I think our FM is fine. And as far as the AM is concerned, the AM is pretty good. I mean, really good. Let me, what I'll do is I'll give you a demo a little bit later. I've got to do this sort of late afternoon, evening, and I'll do a demo on that. But other than that, this thing's looking good. This thing is working very, very well. And of course, as I mentioned, my biggest fear was the FM, which we've sorted. I've got a little bit more work to do here connecting the external DC and of course the stereo. It's not stereo, but it's going to output both channels to a stereo headphone. I'm waiting for the jack that I'm going to be able to get tomorrow because today's a public holiday. Everything's closed over here. Yeah. And then I'll be closing this up and doing the final demo. And hopefully Renee is going to have a radio that lasts a very, very long time, working very, very well. Okay. Let me show you what shortwave's like when you wait for the right moment, the right time of the day for the particular channel. It's now evening. I'm on shortwave 2. Shortwave 2 is the 25 meter band.
I want to just basically leave. Can you imagine a scenario in which the authorities do compromise and that, for example, allow women to take off their head coverings?
Shortwave 3. It's 31 meter band.
So the small towns in America, I feel like the smaller the town, the friendlier they become.
C'est les montagnes de Liangshan au sud-ouest de la Chine.
Please go.
One is Chinese medicine. I mean, are you guys open for that? Like, Last time I Chinese medicine.
And that's what you need to do. You need to wait for the right moment to be able to pick up on shortwave. The earlier in the day, the higher the frequency and so on. But let's see what we get on medium wave in the evening.
Y estamos en el 45 y 40 por debajo. 49 minutos, 9:49 en Canarias. 1, gana el Real Madrid. ¿Qué va a sacar?
This particular station is a bunch of repeaters repeating the same station to practically all the islands in the Canary Islands. So that's why I'm getting from different repeaters, same channel.
Último minuto del partido. En la curva de Android, cerca de Santiago de Compostela. Derecha. Ha empezado contra el exdirectivo de seguridad de Adif y el maquinista de... Marta Silva.
Se da inicio al juicio oral.
And that's it. Our medium wave is pretty normal for Madeira. These stations are all from the Canary Islands. We have one medium wave station, which is one of the ones we picked up there that nobody listens to. But yeah, the shortwave is pretty good. It's very good, actually. This is with the mini whip, obviously. And so is the broadcast band. And FM, as I showed you earlier, is pretty impressive. It's what I expect to get over here. So we've got all that back. And yeah, nearly there. And finally, here we are. She's done. She's all together again. She's dressed up again. And I've got to show you a few details just to complete this report. As you can see, I've got a DC jack going in here. Renner had asked for an alternative AC source so that he wouldn't have to use batteries. And of course, this jack here, or the socket here, is a little bit peculiar. And I decided to do the following, as I mentioned before. I put in a 9-volt jack, a power DC jack. I've actually had to make a hole on here. This looks pretty neat. It looks like it was there. So here's the jack. You use a normal 2.1mm jack, negative on the outside, positive on the inside. Just to make sure that didn't get mistaken, I wrote it on here with an ink pen. So all you do is you plug that in. And now this is actually replacing the battery source. But it's wired in such a way that when you remove it, the connections from the battery go straight through. And when you put this in, the battery ground is disconnected so that this doesn't try to charge batteries that shouldn't be charged. And what this does is that it now allows you to use the power switch, which we weren't able to do before. Okay? The AC mains has no power connected, no switch connected to that input. So that means that whenever you've got mains there, you've got the radio on, and you literally have to disconnect the mains or the plug or the socket, remove it from the socket to switch off the radio. That is not practical. So this way, any wall wart can be used as long as you've got 9 volts, plug it in there, and you've got power and your battery switch is active. The other thing I did, which you cannot see from the outside, but I'll show you the inside, is this earphone socket. Now, it does say there 60 ohms, so you've got to be careful, because what's going to happen now is when you do not have the socket in, the audio goes to the speaker, as you've just heard. When you put the socket or the plug in here for headphones or earphones, it cuts the connection to the speaker, just as the original one did, but it does send the signal to both left and right on your earpiece. So you don't have just the one side. Now that means that your impedance is now lower, which may need consideration. I don't really think so, but just make a note of that. Everything else looks absolutely perfect. Nothing else to report. Everything's working. And the demo that I showed you just was done in the evening, yesterday evening, when I know that reception is a lot better. It's normal, especially on AM, and it's performing very, very well. It's not, I wouldn't classify it as the best receiver that I've ever had on here, but it's up there on AM reception. So it works very well. The one thing I do need to note is that the dial accuracy is a little bit iffy. Now, I've just seen saw it again, the video by Simon Spears, where he mentions precisely that. When you try and adjust the oscillator, and it's quite easy at the back, I did do some adjustment on the drum tuner. You got each individual little board. I did a bit of adjustment. It's not that great. You adjust it for the top and you lose it at the bottom. If you adjust it for the bottom, you lose it at the top. Usually you can extend the top to the right point and the bottom to the right point, and then the linearity might go off. But in most of these shortwave bands, there's only one adjustment. So there's a band, and then you place it where you want to. And that's where things are not that precise. FM is definitely not that precise either. 88, which is here, is actually appearing over here. But as I mentioned, those adjustments are very, very tight. There's wax in there. I try to remove the wax. It just soaks in even more. And the risk of damaging that front end is really just too high for my liking. So I decided to leave it at that. Really what you need to do is you'll know where your favorite stations are on the band, and you more or less use the log scale over here, which goes from 0 to 10. That's probably the easiest way to describe this. Everything else is working fine. The AFC is working fine. As I said before, it's a bit strange. AFC out, the button out means it's actually activated. If you push AFC in, it deactivates AFC. I would have expected it to be the other way around, but apparently these radios are like that. Somebody else has commented. The other thing is I've added these components that I'm going to send back to Rene. You've got your audio jack, your headphone jack over here, and the capacitors and some of those little beady things. The big ones, as I mentioned, one of them was completely damaged to try and replace it, to restuff it. The other two I left in there and just disconnected the contact. And so they are still in the radio. And this thing has not suffered much. In fact, a little bit of Frankensteining. That hole there is about the only change that you'll see to this radio from the exterior, and probably if you remove the back. Unless you look very closely, you don't see anything changed on this radio. So that's it for another project, and I'm really glad I did this. I was looking forward to working one of these, and they do seem to be a lot simpler than I thought. The physical makeup of this, removing it and working on it, is a lot easier than some of the German radios. So it's another one that I can now feel I'm a bit more comfortable with because the experience is there. And so all I need to do now is just thank you for your company. Hope you've enjoyed the series. Hope that this, whatever I found out here, may help you doing your own, as I've been told by quite a few viewers who've been inspired by some of the videos they've seen, and especially this one. And I hope we have a lot more of these working in the near future because of this series. That's really what I want from this. So once again, thank you. Thank you for your company. And if you want to support the channel directly, you can do so on Patreon and on PayPal. Links on the description below. Thanks for watching. Bye for now and stay safe.